Welcome everyone to the next edition of the Care CEO Success Story podcast. My name is Adam James, and today, on this podcast, let me just remind everyone what we do. We are asking and talking with the leading care CEOs around the country on what they consider their single biggest achievement. So if you would want to see who else we've had on this podcast, please go and have a look at previous episodes. There's many great CEOs. Well, now I think, to be honest, there's 4 up to now. Simon's our 5th, and there's many great episodes for you to listen to. But today we have Simon Harrison. He has a portfolio of chair and exec positions with a number of different care providers around the country. He's vastly experienced. Simon works under the umbrella of Ideas Afresh. And today we are going to be talking about, and Simon is going to be sharing with us all about the lesson that he learned, perhaps the most important person for every residential nursing care provider is the home manager. So we're looking forward to hearing what Simon has to say and has learned about that. But before we go on, my name is Adam James of Spring Up PR. And if you don't know who we are, we help care providers and their homes become famous for a range of PR and digital PR methods in order to ultimately help increase with occupancy or recruitment of staff. So without any further ado, let's get straight into the episode. And welcome, Simon. So delighted to have you here. So why don't you tell everyone a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Thanks, Adam. Pleasure to be with you. Adam and I have known each other for quite some years.
That is true.
So it is true. So I have a portfolio of chair and non-exec roles. I started my career many moons ago as a nurse. Charlie and casualty, I guess you would say. So I worked in A&E for a while before moving into NHS general management, doing a master's degree in change, and then moving into the independent sector, and then setting up my own business some years ago, working in social care as an executive, and now slightly older in years.
We all are a little bit.
Trying to have a portfolio where I try and make a difference across a number of different organisations. And I guess my mantra has always been keep it simple. And we talk about things that are important to us in life. And what's important to me in the sector is getting the right ABC, the right attitude, the right behaviour, and the right culture. And if you start to get those right, then you've started to crack what will be a great organisation.
Yeah, it sounds like a great formula. And as Simon said, I was working with Simon, well, certainly a dozen years ago. I'm delighted to have him here on this episode. So thank you again, Simon. In fact, Simon, when I was working with him, he largely got me into the care sector. So it's all down to you. It's all your fault.
It's my
people
fault,
are seeing too much of me on YouTube and other channels. All right, okay. So let's get straight into it. So the home manager. Why lesson you've learned through your experiences is why they are arguably the most important person in any provider's organizational business. So why don't you explain why?
I've worked with a number of organizations, Adam, as you know, over the years, and often we talk in the boardroom, and we talk with senior management, we talk with advisors, we talk with solicitors, we talk with banks and lenders about how we're going to make a difference. Yeah. And that might be so in terms of how we're going to devise the strategy and how we're going to ensure that the organization survives or thrives in what is a challenging sector. But the reality is the person who opens the door to the CQC, the person who opens the door and welcomes families and new residents, the person who talks to the commissioners, the person who recruits and hopefully retains the staff is the home manager. And that person, we mustn't undervalue. And I always say whenever I'm visiting a service, you're more important than I am. I'm dispensable. If I'm not here, the world won't stop. But if we don't have a home manager in a service, it actually makes a huge difference. And actually to the regulator, it makes a huge difference because as people will know, a period of time without a registered manager is a notifiable thing. And that puts a flag up against an organisation. And sometimes it can be hard to recruit the right person. Coming back to my attitude, behaviour and culture, we've got some great home managers doing some great things. But it's about someone who will develop and prosper in an organization and make a real difference on a day-to-day basis.
And let's think about the kind of beginning then. It's the recruitment of a home manager. What tips and advice would you have on that kind of vital, I mean, vital first step?
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be a fit. I mean, when you've been around the space for a while, you meet people and you immediately warm to them, or sadly not. And you just have a feeling. I was chatting to someone earlier today. They'd met someone who'd come for a home manager role, and they said, on paper everything was fine, but they just had a feeling when they walked in the room they just weren't going to be the right fit. They weren't the right person. And other times, as soon as you meet someone, just by that initial conversation, I hope we'll make this work because it looks like we're going to have a success here. It's about someone who warms to the organization, warms to the staff in the home, warms to the residents, the people who we're supporting, because that's their home. We're the guests, really, not the residents, because actually that's their home. We can go home at night. They can't, and they've chosen to be there, and therefore we need to respect that.
And in terms of the actual recruitment process and how you go about it, where you maybe advertise, where you maybe search for possibly managers, do you involve a headhunter? How do you go about it to make sure you've got that wide pool of possible?
I mean, there are so many different ways, Adam, aren't there, of recruiting, and no one size fits all. So sometimes you can be fortunate just to use your own networking, just to put something on LinkedIn, or you just know someone who knows someone, and the time is just right. Other times, you need to speak to a headhunter, and when you do that, I think you've got the opportunity then to be clear about the skill set that you're looking for and the particular niche that market might be in. So you might be a heavily local authority biased home, or you might be the other end of a completely self-pay home. And either way, it's about finding the person who's going to fit in the best, bring the most to the organization, bring the most to that home, because every home's unique. Some are in densely populated areas, some are in little village communities. And it's about how that person can then, come in and thrive in that environment and actually, enjoy themselves, because, it is a job, but we do want people to come to work and enjoy it rather than it being a burden.
In terms of then of the process of recruitment and interviews and checking of references and all of that, how do you learned is a kind of good way to go about it?
Yeah, I mean, every organization will have its own way of doing it, but certainly from my perspective, I like to see that the person who they're going to report to will have a say who they appoint. I'd like to see that the staff would get to meet them as well, and not necessarily decide, but at least give some feedback as to, I really like this, or I wasn't so sure about that. And importantly, the residents as well, where possible, giving them an opportunity to meet and go, oh, I really liked them because what they told me was this. And you go, well, that's a nice thing, or that's not so nice thing. And then also, I think it's important that they meet a couple of other people in the organization, whether that be another home manager from another site, or someone else in the organization who's been around a while, just to say, look, what is it you'll bring, and this is what it's like to work here. Because the worst thing that can happen is that in all instances you recruit someone and then within no time at all they leave, because that's really destabilizing and unsettling for everyone, not least of which are residents. So I think it's important that when people come, hopefully we get people to stay. I mean, certainly not just on home managers, but on other staff. I think there are some statistics to say that the biggest turnover is in the initial 3 to 6 months. Once people have been there a while, then generally when they leave, they're leaving for, let's say, good reason, promotion or opportunities elsewhere. But when people leave in the early stages, it's probably because they've just decided it's not for them. And maybe we could have done something different in the first place to try and avoid that.
Interesting. How do you think, because it happens, and there are occasions it happens, what checks, and it's such an important hire for all these reasons you're mentioning.
It is. I mean, references are references are one thing. I always think it's good to speak to the person who's providing the reference if possible, not just take the written reference, because written references generally are okay. It's what's not said. So sometimes it's a good idea, where possible, to have a chat and say, is there anything else you can tell me? What's good about this person, or what would you say was their weakness that we would need to keep an eye on? Look, we've all got weaknesses and we've all got strengths, but it's about how people balance in an organization.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that the idea of having a verbal conversation is great, because you can ask those questions that you spontaneously feel that you can ask, and have a chat and listen to what they say, and have more questions based on what they say. I mean, a small example, we were making a particular hire, and I literally called out of the blue. I just put it on the phone and called the person, and they answered. And I said, so, we're thinking of hiring so-and-so. It was not a manager's job at all, but it was, still important hire for us. And they sounded so downbeat of what's going on here. And then I said, so sorry, you sound so downbeat. Normally when I call people, they say, oh yeah, great. And in fact, on this one, they actually apologized and said, the reason why I'm sounding like this, it was actually just after the Queen died. So that's one reason. Plus, I've had a busy day. But let me answer your question properly. You're actually hiring a really good person. So I was like, oh my God, so relieved. And then I was able to ask more questions, as you say, based on that. So yeah, I think that's vital. Anyone listening, to make sure, because it's such an important hire, and to have a conversation, even if it's for 5-10 minutes, you'll quickly know, won't you? Would that be correct to say? Do you think?
Absolutely, you quickly know.
All right, great. So, okay, so you made a great hire, you hope, and everything goes well. Where does it go from there in terms of nurturing that manager, empowering them, as we were saying before we press record on this episode? Where does it go from there to make sure they stay, they enjoy it, and they help your provider essentially provide the best of care?
I think it's about making them feel valued in the organization. So, from time, obviously they'll have a line manager who should be doing their supervisions, their appraisals, all of the formal stuff. So their regional manager or whatever title it is would be checking in on them. But I think it's good that in the organization, other people do that from time to time, whether that's one of the directors, whether it's the chief exec, whether it's the chair. From time to time, they check in with them, whether that be an informal visit or whether it be a phone call, just to say, hey, we know you've joined the organization. Welcome. How's it going? Is there anything that we can do? Not to undermine the line management, just to make them feel that they're part of a bigger organization and actually they feel welcome. And then from time to time, giving them the opportunity to meet with peers and learn that their problems aren't unique, but the solution in that home might be, but it's good to be able to bounce that off of the people. And it's providing formal networks, but it's also providing some informal networks as well, which makes them feel they're not alone. Because I know, going back some years, when I was a hospital director in the acute sector, so similar in terms of its position in the organization, slightly different organization, but nevertheless, you were out there, and actually everything on a day-to-day basis, you felt as though everything was your responsibility. And sometimes you just needed someone else to chat with, not because they were your boss, just to talk about, these are the things that I've dealt with today. And they've said, yeah, I've had similar things. And and just at the end of the day, feeling that someone else is listening and understanding the challenges that you faced. Because look, it's a big job, and we sometimes underestimate that. We promote people into home managers' jobs. Just because you're a good nurse doesn't make you a good home manager. Just because you're a good whatever doesn't make you a great boss. But I often say it's about people, giving them a toolkit. I remember this quite some time ago. Someone gave me a toolbox, but when I opened it up, there were no tools in it, and I had to go and find those. Hopefully now, over the years, you open the toolbox and you've got more tools in it. So it's about making sure that when we appoint people, we give them their toolbox, we give them some tools to put in it. Not all at once, we give them opportunities. Finance is a classic example. So, you become a home manager, you're really good at filling the beds, you're really good at quality, you're really good at managing your staff. And then the regional manager says, and what does your P&L look like? And they kind of look a bit blank. And that's not a criticism. It's about, because we've not necessarily always given them the toolbox about understanding their finances. So often we run, finance for non-finance managers courses where
nice.
Someone in finance just sits down with them, not to teach them to be an accountant. We don't need that. Just so they understand and they feel valued. Then you go, okay, so I understand now. This is in my control. So this is the staff that I'm recruiting. This is the agency spend that I'm spending. Therefore, that's what I'm doing on staff costs. This is what I'm doing on direct costs. They can't influence gas and electric, although they can turn the lights off now and again. But we've got to keep the home warm. We've got to keep it lit. That's probably for someone else to deal with. But food costs, for example. is some that they influence. We don't want to, cut costs, but we don't want waste.
Yeah.
And then on the fees, understanding that when a new person comes in, if this is a fee range, what can we get here for those residents? And at the end of the day, looking and just describing to them, look, it's just like your own bank account at home. This is the money that comes in from the people we look after. That's the money that goes out on the staff.
Yeah.
And that's what's left at the end. And that's what your numbers look like. And putting it into a context where they understand. And then explain it to other people in the organization such that they understand that whether even if you're not for profit, they understand that at the end of the day, we can't be loss making. Otherwise, we don't have a business. Just the same as if your bank account at home has no money in it, there isn't any money left to go somewhere else at the end of the day, is there?
Yeah. In terms of what you feel in the long run makes a good manager, in terms of, you've talked about all those areas that they have to cover, as well as having extraordinarily good person-to-person skills.
Yeah.
What do you feel is, makes a good manager, and what can be a highly stressful environment as well?
I think it's someone who has the ability to listen to everyone else in the organization. So you're listening to people from above you, you listen to people your level in the service, you're listening to families and residents, you're listening to the regulators, you're listening to commissioners, and being able to balance all of that and deciding then, well, in the home's best interest and in the interest of everyone with support, this is what we're going to do, and not forgetting that quality comes before everything else. We often say that in the boardroom, well, what's first on the agenda? And for me, it's quality. Yes, of course, revenue is important. Yes, of course, profit's important, because otherwise we haven't got a business. And cost is important in terms of control. But for me, it's about, how's the quality in this organization? Can we get the quality right? Can we recruit and retain the right staff? And then the revenue and the business will follow. Because if we get it out of order, it doesn't work. And that's the same in the boardroom. It's the same at home level. Yeah,
very interesting. And tell me about, recruitment is obviously an issue right now. And the manager's role in recruitment and retention, anything that you've learned or about that you feel is good asset or skill for the manager to have?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I come back to my original point about ABC. If you've got the right attitude, behavior, and culture in a home, you'll often find it's easier to recruit and, importantly, easier to retain staff. And the same things that I said about the manager are pertinent to the staff as well. So when a manager appoints a new carer, it's important as well that they recognise that they're valued. We give them some training, we give them support, we give them some time then just to say, how are you settling in? How's it going? Is there anything you've learned? Is there anything you've seen that you need me to explain? Because, it's an interesting experience. I've worked in healthcare all my life, so I don't know anything different. But for someone who's new to it, there may be situations that they find unusual or distressing, and it's giving them an opportunity to talk, not least of which when someone dies. Death is a perfectly natural thing in a care home. But when you see it for the first time, it's distressing. This is someone's loved one who's passed away. It may be the first time you've seen that. And it's giving people the opportunity to say, how do you feel about this? You're not alone in being upset, but it is the nature of the kind of work that we do. And hopefully the person has had a positive experience at the end of life. They've got a lot of positives to think back on and what they've achieved in their life with the family, etc. And it's about being able to talk that through with people so that they understand that whole thing about internal communication, as well as the external communication, which is more your bag, Adam. But but in terms of that internal communication piece, about what do people have the opportunity to talk about and acknowledge the situation they've dealt with.
And tell me, Simon, again, going back to what you feel you've learned, so a manager working in maybe either a single home operator or maybe a 3-home operator versus 40 plus, care home provider. What's difference there in being a manager, and what do you feel is essentially what do you feel is the difference there?
Well, it's interesting you should say that, because I think I've worked with different size organizations over the years, and I think the smaller, perhaps more family oriented services, it's easy for everyone to know each other. It's actually relatively straightforward to bring everyone together. So you could have the home management team, including your home managers, in a room and have a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and celebrate. When you're in a big organization, that's harder to do, and therefore you end up probably doing that more regionally. because that's the easier way to do it. Your affinity then isn't necessarily with the main head office, it's with your regional office. And therefore that's your peer group. But regardless, I think it's about ensuring that in the organization you feel part of it, whether you're part of a 3 or a 300.
Right.
It's making sure that people feel valued, they feel part of it. They know who to go to when they have a problem, whether it's a big or a small organization. They should feel that they've got someone to go to and talk to about their issues, and that they feel very much supported. It's always important that people know that someone at the end of the phone, whatever time of night or day, who's there to talk to, because otherwise it can be lonely.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I hear it time and time again, and I'm hearing it again now, is this idea of culture, having a sense of belonging and a good culture to work in. If you can get that right, everything can flow a whole lot more easily from that. And we all know, we've all experienced, all of us working in the sector, bad working environments, and you can quickly tell. Usually it comes from the top, doesn't it? I don't know what you think. You know, if there's a bad culture, it comes from the top.
And it's about making sure that people understand the point I've made around what's the priority. The priority has to be quality of care for the people we support.
Yeah.
If it's not that, then we've probably got something wrong.
Yeah, that's great, Simon. This is all really good material insights for everyone listening. And before we go, is there anything that you would like to share that you feel you've not covered up to now? No,
I don't think so. I think for me, it's an exciting sector, it's a challenging sector, and it's ever more challenging. Whether you look at it from a big P or a little P political environment, but it's incredibly rewarding. We're all we have a privilege to look after the people we look after and hopefully make a difference in their lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely spot on. Simon, thanks so very much.
Pleasure, Adam.